Okay, so welcome to your very first Building Blend Shapes video. I think that this video is probably going to be maybe a two-parter. I think that because there's so many things that we need to cover, it's just probably a good idea to break it up into small chunks. Keep in mind that we're going to be going as even speed as possible. I don't want to go too slow to bore people, but I also don't want to go so fast that it just really confounds people. So what I have here is this very simple character head. And you notice that just like if we were building our own character, one side of the character is simply instanced. I'm taking it from this point, assuming that you understand the process of modeling, so we can just take it on from here. I'm just going to delete that side, and this character is set up more or less the way that you would set up a more detailed character. You're free to adjust and change this to your liking. If there are things about it that you want to clean up or you want to add detail to it, you're certainly welcome to. But I was trying to keep this as simple as possible just for expediency. Okay, so I think this character is close enough to be what we would be prepared to start rigging. Obviously, the character doesn't have any ears. The neck might not be exactly the way you want it, but again, this is just for practice sake. So the first thing that I would do is just delete the history and freeze the transforms so that this character head is as simple as possible. And then making sure that, looking at it from the side, all of my vertex points are straight down the middle. There's no overlapping. Even if I go into the low poly version, we're good. So now I can mirror my geometry, make sure it's across the negative X, and hit mirror. Now when I do that, if I hit smooth, you can see that a couple of these points have sort of merged together. That's not that big a deal. It's just part of the merge process, and the merge threshold setting just has to be set to a little bit lower. So if I change this to 0.5, I can look around and make sure that that took care of all of them. Depending on your particular character, I know that this video is specifically assuming that you're using the character that I'm using, but we should be good to go. So we'll say delete our history, and now we're all set. Okay, so what I have here is a character head that is more or less ready to be rigged. Now, I have a PowerPoint with all of the different head shapes that you'll need to make, and I thought that this would be a really good idea to just make this video assuming that you've already seen the instructions in the class and everything else. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'll start by looking at it from the side. Now, I have my PowerPoint with me, and I have all of the names that I know I'll be using based on my little work chart. But before I do that, I'm just going to duplicate this head, and I'm going to move it over. Now, something very important to note. This head we're going to call the master head. That's because this is the head that we end up seeing, and that eventually it will be the one that is actually on the character moving around. This head we are going to call final connection. And the reason that we're calling this final connection is because this particular head is actually what's going to get all of the blend shapes. And then this last head will be connected to this final master head as one little connection. And the reason that we're going to do that is so that if anything goes wrong and we have to remove this head from the rig, we won't be losing all of that blend shape information. Okay? Now, because we're able to do this little daisy chain, that's going to help us out in the future as well. So now that I have this final connection, also notice this is very important. notice how right now it says translate X, and it says that it is not 0. If I select this one, it says that all the transforms are 0. But this one, it says that I moved it over. Do not try to freeze transformations on this head. And the reason is, this head, this one, must think that this is its original starting position. Okay? If it doesn't, then your heads will not work properly. So no matter how many times you duplicate it, okay, this one still has to think that this is still home base. Alright, so what I'll start to do now is I'm going to just start to build up some of the basic heads that I know that I'll be using. Okay, now remember, we're going to be using some that are just a single head, and then others that require a left side and a right side. We're going to have this little triangle trick. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll name this one open, and I can duplicate, slide it over, and since I already know that these 4 are the ones that I'll be making, we'll make sure that this one is open, this one is closed, this one can be narrow, and this one can be wide. Now, why am I taking the time to name all of these? Well, first, I haven't done anything to them, and it would be horrible for me to have to guess if all of these were named the same, or something so similar that I didn't know what I was supposed to do to each one. So here we have open. So when I look at this head and I select it, I know that it has to be the one that has the mouth open. The other reason that I want to name all of these is because that's eventually what the blend shape is going to be called. So when I attach it to this head, and all of them, once I've built all of them, will be attached to this character, this one will have that giant list, and I'll be able to read the word open, the word closed, the word narrow, and so on. Okay? Okay, so if I check my blend shape little cheat sheet here, and by the way, this is in your creating blend shape controls in Maya. It's the PowerPoint that I've printed out and given to you. If I just zoom in a little bit, we can see that so far we've already created the open, the closed, the narrow, and the wide, and that those are going to be single controllers. Then we have things that will require the triangle technique, which is things like smile, because you can smile just on the right side of your mouth and you can smile just on the left side of your mouth. Frown, same thing. Squint, obviously if you have 2 eye sockets, then you can squint on either of them. And so what we can do is we can just go down the list and start creating each one of these. That way all of the heads are present and accounted for, and then we can begin to actually model them in. So we go Smile Master and then Frown Master. So I'll just grab 2 of these, duplicate them, and slide them over. And now I know that I need the triangle technique, so I'm just going to just work a little faster by doing it that way. Now this is going to be called Smile Master. This one is going to be called R Smile, and then L Smile. Now you can put this as L, because you're looking at it on the left-hand side, but I always think of it as in terms of which direction the character is looking. So just make sure that if this is the R, then the R should be this side of the character's mouth, because it's his or her right side. Okay? So then we'll do the same thing to this one. This is going to be called Frown Master. R Frown. And L Frown. Now keep in mind, I am duplicating some of the original, some of the blend shape heads. That's not a problem unless you've already changed some of the points. Remember, it has nothing to do with the location. It has everything to do with where those points have gone. Okay? So we can bring up my little cheat sheet again, and the next set's going to be squint. So I'll grab just this entire set, duplicate it, and slide it over. This is going to be called squint master. And then we have right squint and left squint. And you see how, because I already have some of these set up, into a triangle, and this one was already called L something, and this one was already called R something, I'm able to work a little faster because that's already set up for me. Okay, so then we have eyebrows up master and eyebrows down master. So we can take all of this, duplicate it, slide it down, and we'll call this eyebrows up master. And then what I can do is select this entire name, copy it, paste it, and just change the word to down. Now I'm spelling down D-W-N just for speed's sake. So we have eyebrows up, so we'll call this R, eyebrows up, and L, eyebrows up. Then we have eyebrows down, so I'm highlighting the word eyebrows down so that I can come over here and say right eyebrows down. I'm just pasting it in to substitute the letters that I don't want. Okay, so bring back my little cheat sheet. Those are eyebrows. We now have cheeks puffing out and sucking in, so we can grab this entire set again. And notice that the set that I'm talking about, we have frown and its opposite smile, so smile and frown, and we have eyebrows up and down. I'm trying to keep them just a little bit organized so that I can see how they quickly get grouped together. It just might speed things along later on. Okay, so this is going to be cheeks puff. And then cheeks suck master. So we can highlight all of that and give that a right cheeks suck, a left cheeks. Then we'll grab the cheeks puff, right, and left. Okay. So now we have upper eyelid up, the upper eyelid down, and then the lower eyelid up, and then the lower eyelid down. So this is going to require 2 sets for each one. And how convenient, we have 4 right there. So we'll bring this down, slide these over so that we know that they're part of the same sort of set. And keep in mind, this is when things can start getting a little bit confusing because we're looking at an upper eyelid up and then upper eyelid down. So we'll start with that. So we'll say upper lid up, and then we'll call that master. Copy that entire thing, and then this is going to be upper lid going down. Okay? So I can grab this and say upper lid up for the right side, upper lid up for the left side, upper lid, oops, try that again. So right and left, upper lid down. So now what we have is we need this, but instead of upper, we're just going to change the first part to lower. So now we have lower lid up, and we're going to have lower lid down. Okay? So it does take a little while for some folks to just wrap their brains around what we're doing. I promise you there is nothing easier than just giving it time and practicing a lot. Nothing will make you very good at this if you're not putting the time necessary in. Okay, so we have upper lid, and then we had lower lid. So let's just make sure there's lower, there's upper, there's right upper, left upper, right upper, left upper, right lower, left lower, right lower, left lower. So we have up and down, up and down. Good. So we have nostrils flaring, master, and nostrils flaring both in and out. So we just need these guys, duplicate them and slide them over. So this is going to be nostrils flare out, master, and oops, just grab all of this, no reason to type it again. Nostrils flare in, master. So we'll go nostrils flare out for the right side. And remember, you have to hit enter when you're changing the name. Nostrils flare in for the right and the left. And by the way, I'm taking my right hand off of the mouse to hit the enter button on my keyboard just because it's so much closer. You know, it just one of those things, might be a little bit of a time saver. Okay, upper lid, upper lip up, and then upper lip going in, and then lower lip. So we have basically the same thing that we have with the lids. We have upper going in and up, then we have lower going down and up. Okay, so that's going to be 4 masters. So we might as well just grab all of these, pull them down, and we'll call this upper lip. So upper lip going up, upper lip, and instead of down, we're going to call that in. And then we have lower lip going up, in, because the lower lip wouldn't be going up, it would be going in, and then the the lower lip going down. Okay? So we have the upper lip for the right, the upper lip for the left, the upper in on the right side, and the left side. Okay, so we look back at our cheat sheet. We're almost done. The next thing we have to do is begin to build our controls that we'll need. But let's make absolutely sure we've got the lower lip going down, lower lip going up. All right, so these are basically the main essential shapes. Keep in mind, you know, one of the very first rules of rigging is you have to know what the character is going to do. If there's something that the character must be able to do that's a little bit unique, then the character has to have blend shapes for that. A lot of times what I like to do is just build sort of what I call wildcards, and that might save you later down the road. And when I say wildcards, what I mean is if you just grab a bunch of heads and just tuck them off to the side like this, I'll do a quick rename for all of them, just call them wildcards. And this way, you now have 7 heads that will be attached to this character, but unless you actually need them, they're not going to do anything, and they're not going to make your job any harder. Now, what you can also do, keep in mind, all of these heads will be connected to this one head, and then this one head will be connected to this final head, okay? So what you can also do is you can have one head as a wild card, and all of these could potentially be blend shapes for that one, and this one would be in the group with all of these that control that last final connection, so then you'd be going over. Now with this particular technique, because this one is going to be that wild card that's part of this, you could, in theory, have unlimited heads specifically attached to this one, and you don't even need to attach it until you know what you need to use. Now, again, might be getting a little bit too far into, the crazy technical stuff, which is why I was just saying, you know what, if you have some spare heads, if there's something that you realize that, you just kind of need and you didn't think about it before, then this would be a really good use for it. Okay? All right. Now, I won't worry about the wild cards for now, but I'll just keep these off to the side. Now, keep in mind you should be saving and saving often, especially when we're getting, this many heads in the scene. Something else that you might consider is moving down to your low-res polygons for all of these. It'll just really help to speed up your scene, and then whichever head you're trying to model, that can be the one that you smooth. Okay, so this one can have the smooth preview on, whereas all of the other ones don't. And by the way, the smooth preview has nothing to do with what the blend shapes, how it controls or moves. It is all entirely based on where these little vertex points go from here. Okay, now a couple of little things to help you move a little bit faster. Keep in mind that I am looking at this head, but if I try to select it, what am I selecting? Well, I'm selecting that entire row. So a really useful thing to do, since I need the side view right now, is go into Show, Isolate Selection, and before I turn on View Selected, I'm just going to tear that little option off. Now I have a floating view, so I can turn it on and off whenever I need to. Okay? Now, remember, this character is, or this particular blend shape that I'm making is going to be open. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to select the main vertice points that are going to be the thing that's moving. Okay, so I can turn on my feather so that I can move just slightly, or I can choose to select them individually. Keep in mind that the last thing we want to do if we do have soft selection turned on is we don't want to move anything that should not be moving. Remember, this isn't going to be an official 100%. All you have to do is turn on this one little controller and the whole blend shape is perfect. It's going to be a portion of a blend shape that, along with other controllers, will make the shape you're looking for. Okay? So I can zoom in on this to make sure I have all the points that I want. Looks like there's a couple that are missing right there, inside the mouth, there. Okay, so first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to move over to my rotate tool. Now, let me ask you a question. Is this really where we rotate our jaw from? Probably not. So what I'm going to do is, because I'm already inside of my rotation tool, hold down the D key and drag it to where the jaw would hinge from. Okay, so it could be roughly right about here. You could say that that's basically where the jaw opens and closes from. So as I start to open it, notice that that feels considerably more believable than if I had just grabbed those points and tried to move it the other way. Okay, now depending on how cartoony you want your character, depending on, how zany and wacky or extremely realistic you want this open and close to be, you might be able to go a little bit wider, or you might need to pull back some. Okay, so I really can't tell you exactly how big this open should be. Okay, keep that in mind. Now what I'm also going to do is I'm just going to grab these side points and I'm going to raise them back up slightly. Okay, now the reason that I'm doing that is so that this area will feel as though it didn't travel quite as far as this area. So you're going to feel that jaw opening, and you're going to feel the crease of the mouth sort of stay behind because it's also being pulled by the top muscles. Now if I wanted to, depending on how complex and how believable / realistic I needed things to be, I can grab the top edges and maybe bring them down ever so slightly. And when I say ever so slightly, I really mean ever so slightly. Keep in mind that we will always be able to adjust our blend shapes even after we've made all those connections, which is very, very useful, because then you get to test things out and decide whether it's working. So I can grab these, maybe drag it in just slightly. Okay, so for right now I think that's fine. I might need to make some adjustments or anything a little bit later, but for now that's good. Alright, so I'll go back to low poly view for him. I will turn off, do the selection, grab the next one, hit 3, turn on selection again. See how this really helps us to keep things moving along at a nice pace. Okay, so we're going to be closing the jaw, so this time we're going to do just the opposite. Put the jaw animation point about where we had it last time. I think so, about here, and then we'll close it. Okay. Now this might be an opportunity to use just a tiny bit of fall off, and when I say tiny, really mean just a little bit. Let's see if that works. Okay, so let's see how we got that. Now, as far as closing the mouth goes, this might require a little bit of adjustment, a little bit of smoothing. If I grab hold of these points here, let me make sure that I have the same points on both sides. If I just grab the crease of the mouth, what I can do is go to Mesh and do Average Vertex. See how that sort of softened it a little bit? That might help me out when I'm closing my mouth. And I can grab the lip points. And start raising all of these up. Okay, so what I'm trying to do right now is create that closed, sealed mouth shape without altering the overall character. Because if I start pulling in the wrong direction or start pulling the wrong edges, I could start making some serious problems for myself. Okay. Alright, so now that this is put together, I might need to make some very subtle adjustments, or I could simply call that ready and waiting. Okay, so maybe this is where it needs to be. Maybe I'll need to adjust things later on, but that one's next. Okay, so we got that done. Click, click. Now I'm back to the next one. So this is narrow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go inside the head, grab all of the vertex points that make up the mouth, simply start scaling that in. Okay, so little by little, I'm going to start to pull away from the last loop. Okay, so notice how I don't have the last loop, and I'm going to continue drawing narrow. And notice that I am only squeezing it narrow. I am not changing this at all. Okay. Okay. So with just a little bit of protrusion, we'll get that sensation that the volume is staying, but the shape itself is changing. Okay. And I know that I'm selecting both sides of this. I could always turn on reflectivity so that if I'm grabbing just one side, I'm already grabbing the other side. Okay? But just remember that if you're going to do that, you cannot have already adjusted it in an uneven way. So if I were to grab one of those points, If I did not have reflection turned on and I had already moved it, the computer might get a little mad at me because I'm no longer looking at the same shape on both sides. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so I'm moving through this as quickly as possible. You do not need to move this quickly. I would much rather you take the time to make your shapes, the best that they can be. But for speed's sake on this video, I'm just going to try to move things along as quickly as possible. Okay. Now, eventually, I would want 90% of this to be as close to being closed as possible. Okay, but in order to do that, it's going to take a little bit more time, and I don't really have that time right now. Okay, so we'll just call that done for now. Go back to low, turn it off, grab the next one, turn it on, and this is going to be wide. Now wide, keep in mind, wide is not a smile. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab it and pull it wide. And then I'm going to grab these points and also start pulling them wide. Then I'm going to grab these points and start pulling them a little bit wide. Okay, so remember, making a wide shape is kind of like making a character, say the word happy. When they get to the EY sound, they're just pulling their mouth straight across. That's not a happiness. That's not a sadness. That's just the shape of making that E sound. Okay, so there's our first 4, and we're pretty much all set. So I'll save. Of course, it's good to save. And we can move on to one of our triangle ones. Now, this is smile. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a smiled shape. But we're not going to make it a 100% finished smile. Okay? Because if we did, that means we would have to grab our eyebrows and raise them up a little bit, maybe take our lower lids and raise them up, maybe flare our nostrils a little bit. But remember, there's going to be a control for every single one of those things I just described. So, even though we are making the smile shape, we aren't going to make it harder for ourselves later. Okay, now I'm trying really hard to keep what I understand about volume and anatomy in my mind as I'm making these shapes. And also notice that it's very useful to have your character with these concentric circles because you're getting that natural mouth crease sort of for free. You didn't have to work very hard to get that. And the reason is because we built it the way that the human anatomy, not perfectly, there aren't tons of muscles behind it, but where there is an overlap or there is 2 muscles working in conjunction with one another, we are getting that sort of automatic sense. So we'll just pull that just a little bit. Alright, and so that'll be it. Now notice that I didn't raise my upper lip at all. That's because we have a controller that will be able to decide how much and when does that raise up to see the top of the teeth. Okay? Now, I could continue on, but I think that right now, the ones that I have, it's probably good to start describing how the next process works. That's creating the controllers and then rigging them up to them. Okay? Okay, so for the sake of time, let's just pretend like I've already done all of these other heads. Because each one of the next set of triangles will be using the exact same technique that you see me do here. Okay? So, if we could say that all of these heads have been properly modeled and they are ready to roll, the next step is to link all of the proper heads to the proper link. Okay? Now, keep this in mind. The top of the triangle will not be connected to that head. This one will simply be controlling these two. This one will simply be controlling these two. This one will control these two, and so on. Okay, so what that means is when it comes time to do your blend shape link, we grab only the bottom set. If it doesn't have a triangle, then of course those are some you're going to select. Okay, so we have all of them selected. Hold down Shift, and the last thing that you select is the head that's going to get that information. So I'll move over to my animation settings, find my create deformers, and right here is my blend shape. Now I'll open this up and make sure that it's reset. Don't want to have anything that I may have changed at all, and I can give this a name. So we'll call this character blends, and I'll hit create. Now, it doesn't really look like a whole lot's happened, but if I open up the channel box and I select this head, this final connection head, then we can see that the character blends are all right there. Every last one of them. And isn't it nice to see that each one has a name and we can understand which blend shape we're looking for? Okay, so we can also see these inside of the animation editors underneath the blend shape editor. Now, this is entirely up to you. If you want to see them across, that's fine. Just to take less space, I prefer to do it like this. I like seeing them up and down. Maybe it's because I see them here up and down. I don't know. But that's just underneath options, orientation, goes from vertical to horizon. So we've got open, close, narrow, wide, left smile, right smile, frown, and all the others. I can check this out, make sure that they are in fact working. Okay, I can smooth this character and see what it looks like now. Now, notice that left smile and right smile don't seem to be doing anything. That's because, as of right now, left smile and right smile have no change whatsoever. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to tell this head to start controlling this one, and also this head can control this one. So just like I did before, just select the blend shapes that you want to connect to a head. Of course, this is only one, so I'm just going to grab one. Hold down Shift, grab the head that you want to have the blend shape. Now, it doesn't necessarily need a name at this point because all of these are going to be secondary. But if you want to, you certainly can name every single blend shape if you wanted to, but it's not necessary. So I'll hit Create, and then select this character, Shift, select this one, just hit G because it says do it again. So I can select both of these, go to my blend shapes, and look at this. They both can smile, right? Now, do we want R smile to have a whole smile and L smile to have a whole smile? Well, no, because if we do, and I bring back my blend shapes, if I say left smile, well, look at what we get. And also, look what happens if I increase the other one. I've doubled the change. See how I'm doubling the change? Now, maybe because you're doing a cartoony character, you think that this smile looks fantastic. Well, if that's the case, then you need to go back and adjust this one, because the master will control the children, and that will control this one. Okay, so just bring all these back to 0. What we need to do is we need to tell this head that it's only supposed to have the right side as part of the influence. And this one needs to be told that only the left side is the influence. And we do that by painting that influence. So I'm going to select my first head. I'm going to come over to Edit, modify. And I'm looking for, there it is, Paint Attributes Tool. Now I'll open up the brush settings because I'm planning on erasing half of the character so that only the part that I want has the influence. Now remember, when a character or an object is completely white, what does that mean? Well, it means 100% of this geometry is under the influence. Now, if I hit reset, this is what you're going to see, unless these settings have been changed, in which case go ahead and hit reset and I'll walk you through how to get the brush the way you want it. First, we don't want replace. We want add. We only ever want add. That way, we're not changing anything the computer doesn't particularly understand, and painting becomes much easier for us. The minimum and maximum values are going to have to be changed, because right now, I can only add from 0 to 1. But what I want to do is make the minimum value -1. Because if I add something and the setting is -1, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to erase. But what I also don't want to do is I don't want to allow any of these points to think that it can move higher than 1 or lower than 0. So I just turn on the clamp values for both. This way, if I do have add turned on and I say brush, 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 it's not going to say ×1, ×2, ×3, ×4. Okay? The influence can really skyrocket and really be a problem if you're not careful. Okay? So, I have add and I have my value as a positive number. What that means is that I can't really do anything right now because it's as high as it can go. But if I go in the opposite direction, then anywhere that I brush changes to black. And if it's black, what does it mean? It means there is no influence in that area. Now this particular area that I'm painting right now doesn't matter in the slightest because there's no change. But when we get to a part that does have change, and remember this is R, so what I want to do is erase the left side of the smile. And I can do that by painting. Watch this. Okay, so I can go inside and grab that last little bit there and make sure that the entire left side of this character has no change, because all we want is that side. And the nice thing about it is, if we look at the blend shape, now we have just that one side changing. Now we're going to do the same thing to the other side. And remember, none of this matters, but if you're the kind of person who likes to stay neat and tidy, you're more than welcome to erase the entire head if you want, except for where you want the influence, okay? But that really doesn't matter, because right now this is the only part that is going to change, all right? So now we have a right and a left. So if we go back to my original head, I can open up my blend shapes and I can look at L smile and R smile, and I can say L's up and R is up. So I can pick and choose, or I can animate both of them on when I need them. Now, watch this. If I turn both of these on, let's say that now that you see this particular smile, you're just really not that impressed. You want it to be the biggest, most ridiculous, cartoony smile out there. Well, the nice thing is, all I have to do is go back to the original one. Because watch this. If I go to wireframe, look at that. This controls this, controls this. So, as I start to change this head, both of those heads have to update too. And so does this. So what that means is, with two screens, let's just go to multi-screen real quick. If I make a new camera, I can see my original or my master head, just like this. and I can move over to my actual smile. Okay, so maybe this is the smile that you wanted after all. And now we can really test it out and see how it works. So I can just start raising it and lowering it, and we can decide if that's what we want. And the nice thing about it is, because these other blend shapes have been built to my specifications, I can also close the character's mouth, and now we have a silly grin. So because closed and left and right smile are on, this is what we get. Okay. Now, if I wanted to go in the opposite direction, now we have a really ridiculous mouth, wide open and smiling. Okay. Okay, so that's basically the technique, and this is going to require you to go through and make sure that this head is blend shaped to both of these, this head is blend shaped to both of those, this one is for these, this one is for these, and so on. This is why we have the triangle, so that as I'm moving down my list, I can say very easily, you must belong to you, you must belong to you, you must belong to you. And it makes life a lot easier because these are the steps that we have to take.